The first e-cigarette was developed in the 1960s, but the current form of e-cigarette entered the US marketplace in the 2000s. It's the Bernie Sanders of inventions. Ignored for decades, and then everyone wants a piece. E-cigarettes rose in prominence as cigarette use has been on the decline in the general population for decades now. The percentage of people who smoke has fallen by almost 75% over the past 50 years. This has been a result of a concerted awareness campaign showing the dangers of smoking, rising taxes and regulations upon cigarettes, and the fact that people realize that smelling like a porta potty at a chili cook-off isn't a great way to live. Most adults are no longer smoking cigarettes. In fact, it's a very small percentage, and that's a huge accomplishment. There's no doubt that e-cigarettes have helped reduce the percentage of people who smoke cigarettes by providing them what is generally agreed to be a healthier option. E-cigarettes or vaping does indeed provide a social benefit, but there's a very concerning problem that has arisen over the past 50 years. And no, it's not the rise of people saying bye, though that is absolutely terrible and should absolutely never, ever be done. The actual problem that has arisen over the past 10 years is the rise of vaping amongst teenagers. Figures released by the Center for Disease Control and Prevention late last year found a 78% increase in e-cigarette use by teens between 2017 and 2018. Think about it. Growing by 78% in 1 year is a massive increase. If this class size grew by 78% over the course of this year, we would have 39 kids in the class now. It already takes a third of the class for just Camden, Colby, and Gavin to get through their vocabulary sentences. Imagine if we tried it with 39 kids. 78% growth in a year is a gigantic amount. Think about Mr. Carpnard. He's a tall guy, but he still seems approachable and nice. What if you went to high school and decided to come back next year to see him, and he's grown by 78%? You would enter a room and see an 11'3" monster greeting you. That's how tall Mr. Carpenter would be if he grew by 78% over a year. That 78% amounted to 1.3 million more high school students using e-cigarettes now than in 2017. But the question is, what caused this growth? Two things directly contributed to the rise of teenage vaping. The first is the growth in advertising for vaping in both conventional and unconventional forms. There is a direct correlation between the increase in advertisements and the growth of teenage vaping use. Perhaps this is because the CDC reports that themes in e-cigarette marketing, including sexual content and customer satisfaction, are parallel to themes and techniques that have been found to be appealing to youth and young adults in conversation or conventional cigarette advertising and promotion. The e-cigarette companies are simply using the same tactics. This is unfortunate because cigarette and tobacco use dropping precipitously before the rise of vaping. We had almost kicked our national addiction to nicotine. It's almost like we had made it to the end of a horror movie. We had finally slain the monster who had killed millions. But then a random passerby, let's call them Jewel, decided to come along and bring the monster back to life. And not only did they bring them back to life, they decided to make the monster hip and brought the monster to where all the young people hang out. The second reason for the rise of teenage vaping is that lack of knowledge about vaping in general. The US Surgeon General, Jerome M. Adams, issued an advisory that pointed out that approximately 2/3 of Juul users aren't even aware that the devices contain nicotine. This lack of knowledge is exactly the point. E-cigarette companies are not required to list all of the ingredients in their products. And they also let customers falsely believe they are inhaling simply flavoring. But Juul, the product that has almost 80% of the market share, does not offer any products without nicotine. Look, people will still make bad decisions even when they know something is bad for them. I know that a bucket of KFC extra crispy chicken has enough cholesterol to instantly make my heart stop functioning. But it's just too delicious for me not to eat. But the thing is, I know what I'm getting into with the chicken. And that's the point. 2/3 of teens don't know what they're actually getting into when they start vaping. There are also two main risks that comes with teenage vaping. The first is the health risk. Let's take Sini, a freshman Keene State student over in Keene, New Hampshire. Sini told USA Today that she had never smoked before she started vaping. Now she has tried multiple times to quit, but she gets a headache and starts feeling shaky without her Juul. She gave USA Today this quote: "It's so stupid to say it out loud, but I literally just got addiction to it because it was a social thing. I've definitely tried to stop, but it's like an addiction, so you can't really stop." Sini, it's not like an addiction in the same way that Keene State is not like a college that admitted someone who doesn't know how to use the word addiction. It just is. This addiction to nicotine isn't easy to cure. That's why e-cigarettes exist, because people couldn't kick their nicotine addiction that was formed when they used cigarettes. This is another major health issue associated with vaping, and that's popcorn. According to the CDC in 2000, a physician reported that 8 former microwave popcorn factory workers had developed a rare and disabling lung disease, bronchiolitis obliterans. 4 of the 8 workers were ill and put on lung transplant waiting lists. The cause of the lung damage was from the vapor containing diacetyl, an ingredient in the butter flavoring added to popcorn. Diacetyl is also found somewhere else, the flavoring for e-cigarettes. So vaping users have to realize that there's a real chance that they may one day need a lung transplant. And the cost of a single lung transplant, as estimated by Milliman Consulting Firm, is $561,000, over $500,000. Aside from the cost of surgery, vaping also comes with other financial costs. According to the National Institute for Health, overall spending amounts for vaping had a median cost of $50 to $75 a month. That means that the average individual who vapes spends at least $600 a year to feed their addiction. That's 60,000 V-Bucks in Fortnite. That's at least 3 pairs of Air Jordans. That's enough to get a seat in the orchestra to see Hamilton on Broadway. It's just $600 that can be spent on better things. Being a vapor also creates a tough sell to others. Like, what's your pickup line going to be? Hey, want to go out with me? I'm a real catch. I clearly have limited self-control, an addiction that requires my attention every few hours, and an increased risk for a health problem that costs over $500,000 to fix. But don't worry, if we go to the movies, at least I always have popcorn in my lungs. But there are solutions to this problem. Government regulations helped decrease the use of cigarettes, especially once they limited the advertising for cigarettes. The same should be done for e-cigarettes. A tax on vaping products with funds going towards treatment and addiction programs, especially for teens, would be an effective way to reduce usage while also helping those who are already addicted. Finally, there needs to be additional outreach from the healthcare community showing the dangers that we know about. They also need to conduct rigorous research to explore health impacts that we are not aware of. The epidemic of teenage vaping is serious, but it can be solved.